Good morning, beautiful people of the Center for Spiritual Living. As you heard from our host, Tom Yanes, this morning, we're continuing our focus this month on the power of meditation. All of the recommended books for this month have the words "the power of" in them, or "the power," so that by the end of the year we will have we'll have covered a lot of territory that relates to the power of spiritual living, the spiritual experience. And this month's recommended book is the one I wrote on the power of meditation. And we started off the beginning of this month on week 1 talking about how to work with a restless mind. And in that week, I covered some of the myths that go along with meditation, and one of them being that meditation is really hard to do. Another myth is that you have to be able to completely quiet your mind to have a correct and proper experience of meditation. Another one being that meditation takes a lot of time, and I just don't have that kind of time for it. What's another one? When I meditate correctly, I'll have this otherworldly, mind-blowing, supernatural experience, and so on. And you already probably know this, but I'll remind you anyway that you and I have a number of free resources available to us through which we can catch up on any of the messages that we've missed, go back in time. And for our radio listening audience, you can see this at our website, www.cslsr.org. You see what I'm going to show the audience right now as a way of reminding what we have. Here at our website, you'll notice that there is a menu item called Audio and Video, and if you click it, you'll have access to a number of things, one of them being the complete video library of all of our messages. All of it is free, and you'll see right up there is Mark Anthony Lord's message, which was just last week. In other words, it's just wonderful to be able to go and see that if you missed it. That's how I keep up with what's going on in the center when I'm not here. And the video team is incredible. Sometimes the video is even up on the server on the same day. Sometimes it takes a couple of days for editing, but you can go and see it there. If you prefer to listen to your message, say on your iPod or your iPhone or your CD or wherever, on the audio content, you'll see there's a whole list of all of the messages there. And you can't see it, but I put a circle around one of the menu items which says subscribe. In other words, you can fill in your email address there and have the weekly podcast delivered to your email inbox every week, as simple as that. So I wanted to let you know about that so that if ever you miss one of the services, you know how to catch up. Also because many of our listeners and users come from all over the world. And it's fun to be a part of that. We have people listening in Spain and Australia and Africa and England. It's really wonderful to watch where they land from. So it really is a fulfillment of our vision of a spiritual community without walls, beyond borders, where borders are irrelevant. Getting back to our process, in second week of the series, the topic was what happens next? Now that I've got this meditation practice, what can I expect? Well, some of the things we said we might be able to expect is an increase in clarity, a decrease in attachment, clinging, a real sense of how important it is to have balance and sometimes a rest from even spiritual practice, shifts in perspective, peace and quiet. And that brings us to this week, and the topic for this week is engaging with the self that is at the center, the peaceful self of our being. So I brought along a slide or two, and I invite you, if you feel like it, to read this one with me. Meditation is something you do with yourself, which is exactly what makes it challenging for some people. One of the recurring concerns among people I teach or counsel spiritually is their discomfort with being alone. Every time I read that slide, people nod, look around at their neighbor, or smile. I think it's common, and yet it seems to me that to be the case that when we can contentedly be alone, that is exactly when we discover a clearer sense of our place in the scheme of things. And that's when we start to get to answer the question, who am I? We develop a sense of our self, and with that comes this increase in confidence and resilience and assurance. Now, I know you and I can never, ever fully answer the question, who am I? However, it's better to have your own incomplete answer to that question rather than to live with someone else's definition of who you are. I know that certainly that was the case for me. When I first discovered spirituality as a path, I was laboring under the definitions of other people for who I was to be in the world. The world had a lot of ideas about who I was supposed to be, who I am, and it was very stressful, trying to keep it all clear, keep it all sorted out. It reminded me of a slide from the second week that I was here, and I thought it was so good I brought it back. Why don't you read this with me? Some people have their identity wrapped up in their partner, their career, or family, so much so that they have forgotten who they are without those identifiers. And silence, the experience in which they would reflect on their identity, is not strongly celebrated in our culture. It sure is a lot to deal with all of those identifiers. You know, I just returned from our national convention in Florida, and one of the things I got to attend was the presentation of a movie in which neuroscientists, I think that's what they're called, were talking about the stress that comes with dealing with all of the information and identifiers of the world, and how stress has very particular effects on the human condition, on our bodies. And one of the scientists said that most people, you and I, are likely to identify the source of our stress as being something external. You know, some of these things. Yeah, you know, partners, people, employment, possessions, particulars. And the scientists went on to say in their message that actually, in fact, in reality, is an inside job, and that stress comes from how we interpret the world. One of the scientists talked about our body's capacity to reset after an appropriate stressor, a normal stressor. You know, like a kid nearly falls off a chair and you reach out to grab him or her, and then once everything's okay and the adrenaline sets back down and it's all well, reset. That's normal. The other day, I arrived at the parking lot here at the center, and one of my co-workers here at the center snuck up behind me in the parking lot, and as I was walking to the door, he surprised me and said, "Boo!" I tell you, my heart nearly leapt out through the top of my head, and then very quickly, everything came back to normal again. Reset. All is well. Now, if he had snuck around me all day and hid behind every door and jumped out behind every closet and said boo every time, then my system wouldn't have the opportunity to reset, and I would be in a constant state of heightened readiness. Sound familiar? Right? Now, the scientists talking in the movie, and by the way, I've invited the movie maker to bring his movie to our community, so you will see this for yourself. One of the scientists said that after repeated exposure to stress, the body's systems break down into dysfunctional habits and they can't reset anymore. And in our fast-moving culture, with its increasing complexity and surprises and parking lot boos, it's becoming more and more relevant to have and to know how to have our own personal time and space to reset, a time and space in which the stimulation of every kind is suspended. Our convention was in Orlando, Florida, and we had a free day on the conference on which we also had a free pass to go to any amusement park of our choice, any theme park of our choice. So I chose to go to Disney's Magical Kingdom, which was really wonderful. And I had a wonderful time, and just 2 hours into it, I realized I was exhausted. I mean, not for any other reason other than that I was being bombarded with sensory richness, non-stop sound, smell, touch, taste, noise, oh, the noise, noise, noise. It was as if somebody was behind every door, ready to jump out and say, look at this, eat this, try this, feel this. Now, the movie maker I was talking about, his name is Austin Vickers, and in his movie, one of the characters says that you and I, there's this vast amount of information being poured over us all the time in regular life, never mind at an amusement park. Just in everyday life, the amount of information pouring down on us is immense, and you and I are capable of absorbing, processing, and understanding less than 1% of it. Of all of this data flowing over us, and to make sense of this little bit that floods all over us, we use a system of markers called memory. We organize things according to how similar they are to things we have already seen, just so we can handle it. So we don't have to process everything all over again all of the time. We store the memory. So in a manner of speaking, we don't really see things as they are happening. We see things based on our experience of how we've seen them before, how they used to be, how they first appeared, and what they meant. And we call that reality, which is actually the good news. See, because it's long been the idea in this teaching at the center that this is the reason why we say that reality can be changed. Because to us, it's a matter of reinterpreting the data. It's why we are inclined to think that the past can be rewritten. Indeed, it's the foundation of spiritual mind treatment. That's the word we use for affirmative prayer, because the idea in that prayer is that through a process of shifting perspective, we can have a different experience of the same life. Now, the keynote speaker at the end of the conference was Jean Houston. And she said it this way, describing reality. Same thing, different words. She said it this way. As seen, so appears. Yeah. But who has the time to spend seeing things differently, right? By the way, next year's conference is in Las Vegas. Talk about sensory overload. Which is a little closer to us. It's an easier travel to destination. So if you've never been to a national conference of Centers for Spiritual Living, I encourage you to think ahead and come with me to the conference. It's just a really wonderful experience. So I'll remind you closer to the time when it's happening and what's going to be on the agenda. Las Vegas, 2015, yay. So there I was, listening to all of these great speakers and these great ideas and talking about perception and information overload, and it occurred to me, well, it renewed my mission to talk about and teach people about the wonderful benefits of taking time out to engage with that self that is at the deep silent center of their being, so as to reset. Because there's so much noise. And do you know so many people have become so accustomed to all of the noise that they actually feel and experience discomfort without it? I have a friend, whenever he gives me a ride somewhere, I get in the car and he's got the radio on very, very softly. Because without that noise, he feels uncomfortable. I feel uncomfortable with it. Because I can hear it, but I don't know what it's saying. I have another friend who can't go to sleep unless the TV is playing. Read this with me. Many people are simply uncomfortable with silence, whether that is in a lull in conversation or in a too quiet atmosphere in a restaurant or at a party. Silence for some almost conveys a message that something is out of place. Because we're being constantly bombarded with information, and because we are a person, you and I are left with very little option other than to attempt to figure it all out, to process it all. And that processing and markers and memory, it takes up almost all of our available time and energy, so we get to a point, don't we, where we just want to chill out, we want to tune out. And so we often do that and watch TV, read a book, go to the movies. In other words, we keep on going. More feeding of information, more material, even more to process and figure out. So we spend our time, when we think we're chilling out, we're just reconfirming reality as it once appeared. So I think that without the time and space for stillness to balance it all out, I think, well, a person, it's probably like the body. A person loses the ability to reset. I've seen it. I've seen people who have forgotten where home is. And so they walk around and live in this world of appearing things as if it is real. Walking around that theme park, I noticed that after a while I got to a point where I stopped being able to see things or feel things or experience or even think. I just realized I was just walking, numb, like a robot, I couldn't do it. I stopped being there. I stopped being where my body was. I couldn't take it in. It was too much. I tuned out or in. And I realized I had to do that. I had to do that so I could come back to myself and remember home. And in that moment, as soon as I remembered that the silence within me had never ever departed, that's when I was able to return to the park and be amused by it again. Right? Reset. And although it seemed to me that I had been disconnected for a very long time, in reality it only took a moment, and that's the nature of this refreshment. It just takes an instant. Time changes in that inner world. Things seem longer and shorter than they really are. Like this 5 minutes of silence we have in our service. When we first started doing the silent meditation, and I'll tell you why we started, because we had a visitor once and he came and said, you talk about inner life, meditation, contemplation, and all these things, but silence is conspicuous by its absence in your service. He said, I feel like I'm just bombarded with information. I went, wow, he's absolutely right. So I brought in some silent. First time we did 1 minute, there was nearly a revolution. And then we built up to 5 minutes, and I remember one gentleman was very disturbed by it. He said to me, "Those 15 minutes that we sit still is absolutely unbearable." He couldn't come anymore because of the 15 minutes. But oh, the silence. In that interior world of silent, nurturing peace is where we encounter ourselves, in the form of our undisturbed, innocent self, in other words. There is a frame of mind in which you are balanced, unpressured, not manipulated. And that frame of mind is available primarily, it seems, when you are alone in quietness. It is for that state of mind primarily that I meditate. A friend of mine told me about a meditation retreat he went on. He went on this retreat and he was asked to go for one whole day from sunrise to sunset and do nothing. Without engaging in any activity at all. He was not to read anything to pass the time, watch TV, do email. He was not to even so much as read the ingredients on a can of beans. Just take care of his biology and do nothing. And I said to him, "Well, what did you do?" And he told me the story. He said, "When I first heard the assignment, I thought, piece of cake, I can do this." He said, but it became the most difficult thing to do. He said very quickly into the exercise, within the first hours, he started to feel anxious, a nervous anxiety, a sort of irritability. And instead of having a mind that was filled with peace and calm and spaciousness, he said it seemed to him like his brain was screaming at him, "Give me something to consume. Feed me, Seymour." So I said to him, "What did you do? What did you do?" And he said, "Well, I talked to my own mind very gently, and I never forgotten how important it is to be gentle with ourselves." And he said, "I just talked to my mind and I said, I know this is tough, I know it is, and I'm going to try and sit it out. I'm going to try to sit through it. And you know what? If I never ever do it again in my whole life, that's all right with me. But I'm going to stay with it because for at least once in my life, I will have been through a whole entire day with sitting still." And he talked himself gently through it. And he said then something happened. He kind of lost track of time because that which was painfully slow suddenly just moved at its own pace. And before he knew it, he was at the end of the day preparing for bed. And he realized that with him was this profound peacefulness that he said he had forgotten that he knew. He didn't produce it. He came home to it. Like an old friend, he found it again. He came home. He pressed reset. I tried the exercise for myself, doing it with some modifications, and I write about it in here, so you're welcome to read about my experience in it. But more important than giving you the exact method for you to do something like that, I think my purpose here is to convey to you that there is a way for you to create an experience of sanctuary where you find your own home, in which you can press reset for yourself and be refreshed. A way that works for you that may match nobody else's way. And I want to read to you a little bit from the book as a way of setting up an experience that I'm going to invite you to participate in later this afternoon. There were times when I couldn't find the peace and the witness within, and there were times in which I came to my meditation practice distressed and preoccupied. The row going on in my head rang alarms of danger and forced my body into high alert status and readiness to flee. In such times, a half hour of sitting felt like a week in a torture chamber, I imagined. There were times I had to employ strategies to address the state of restlessness that would not abate through sitting. One such strategy I remembered from my early childhood when I learned to recite the rosary and gained much comfort from doing so. At my young age, I didn't perfectly understand the meaning of the words I was reciting, yet that did not diminish the effect of bringing peace and comfort through the rhythmic repetition of words and by keeping track of them with counting beads. The activity displaced my preoccupations. And looking back now, I recognize the state of mind I achieved after the repetitions as being the same quiet mind I encounter today when I meditate. As an adult, I lost contact with the practice and remembered it again when visiting India, where I observed a similar practice of reciting prayers or significant phrases 108 times, keeping track of the recitations with mala or prayer beads. I purchased my own set of beads as soon as I can and printed out one of the world's most ancient prayers, the Gayatri Mantra. Om Bhur-Bhuvaswaha Tat Savitu Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayat. And at 1 o'clock this afternoon, the young adults and I are going to get together to chant this prayer 108 times. And usually the group is for young adults only, but we're inviting anyone and everyone who wants to participate to come to rooms 1 and 2. And it doesn't matter if you don't know the chant or if you don't know what the words mean, because I'm going to show you with a cheat sheet. I'm going to show you what every word means, and together we'll go through the whole thing 108 times. And at the end of 108 times, I feel safe in guaranteeing that you will have an experience of profound quiet and peace, and you will discover a place that you already know. So let us close with some prayer. I invite you to breathe in and to exhale, closing your eyes. Let us begin by remembering the words of our affirmation. The real me, the inward I, is an inseparable part of the whole. And that whole is divinity, that one that is in and through all creation, without beginning and without end, the ultimate reality, the changeless that gives rise to all forms. We are remembering that as our home, the deep, still peace at the center of our being. It is through my recognition of this that the outer becomes as the inner, as my wholeness is revealed, as I begin the process of reinterpreting who I am, where I am, what I'm doing, and what everything means. And for this, I am deeply grateful, and so it is.